the spirit, the attitude of us trying to get over, yo. Growing up in the Bronx was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. You see, we had Orchard Beach, Fordham Road, Yankee Stadium, even though I'm a Mets fan, and the Bronx Zoo. I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, though, my brother Johnny had a very different experience. You see, for him, the Bronx was confusing. Being Puerto Rican and living in the Bronx was confusing for him at times. Let me explain to you what I mean. At home, in casa, we were Puerto Rican, and we were proud to be Puerto Rican. My father would always tell Johnny, "Yo es a Puerto Rican." And it is you shot to be a good Puerto Rican example to your brother. Don't you ever forget that, condenado. Now, when Johnny had to leave the house to go to school, for instance, he had to pass by the African Americans, the Irish, and the Italians. At the time, the Bronx was broken up in groups. It wasn't always all Puerto Rican. We took over that shit gradually. Now, when he passed by the brothers, they would call him an Uncle Tom because my mother was really light and my father was dark. When he passed by the Irish, they would call him a spick. Now, the Italians, they didn't give a fuck. One day he was a nigger, the next day he was a spick. Well, one day Johnny got pissed off and he was like, "Yo, make up your mind. Either I'm a nigger or I'm a spick. Anyone will do, but just pick one. Fucking guineas." Johnny didn't like the Italians. He fought with them all the time. And then he goes to school and his teacher, Sister Mary fucking Ugly, says, oh my God. And to make matters worse, in the summer of 1971, Mommy sent his badass to Puerto Rico. She wanted to get him out of the island for a minute. He was gonna board on a plane to be with his people. He was going to the homeland. He was going to Puerto Rico to be with his fellow Puerto Ricans. He lands in Ponce, and guess what? He's not Puerto Rican over there either. It took our fellow Puerto Ricans 3 days to realize he was damaged goods. They shipped his ass right back. But at this point, Johnny's like, "Yo, you know what? If it's so hard to be Puerto Rican, I'm gonna pick my own nationality." So he grew dreads, and he became Jamaican. For 3 years, he spoke with an accent like this and grew dreadlocks. It drove my mother crazy. I beat Johnny up a lot over his Rasta spirit. For me, I didn't care much about the ethnic stuff. Maybe because I was kind of young. To me, it was just a big old contradiction because it mostly dealt with the outside. For me, nationality should be like a religion. You should be able to choose the one that fits you best. Listen, I know a lot of white guys that should be black, and I know a lot of black guys that should be Dominican. Everybody should have an outer nationality experience. Not for nothing, I never knew what it was to be discriminated against. You know, like, I never really felt racism. To me, it's just stupid people acting stupid. Like stupid Naldo Ramos. Now, Naldo Ramos was the self-proclaimed mayor of Prospect Avenue. You see, he tried to teach me that the blacks were lazy and couldn't be trusted, that the Italians were nothing but a bunch of greaseball gangsters, that the Irish were never sober, and that Jews were just cheap controlling people trying to take over Prospect Avenue. And Puerto Ricans, we were God's chosen people. Never mind domestic violence and alcoholism, we were God's chosen people. And if anybody questioned it, cut it. Asians, be careful, they all know karate. Come to think about it, Naldo Ramos is the first racist I ever knew. But that's okay, because with all the stupid people I bump to on a daily basis, I know that I could just walk away. You know, remove myself at will. And team sports was one of those ways. Team sports in the Bronx is fun if you're into pressure, animosity, and vengeance. Now, I played 3 sports. I played baseball, basketball, and football. I played organized baseball like my brother Johnny. I wasn't as good as my brother Johnny, but I played organized baseball, and I loved my glove. I went to sleep with it every night. It was connected to me like my... It was connected to me. And I was proud of my glove. Listen, it was beige, double-strapped, and 13 inches long. Yes, I had a big glove for my age. People will make comments at the size of my glove. They will be like, ay, nene, pero qué cosa tan grande. My uncle actually tried to play with my glove. He even offered me money, but I was like, yo, play with your own damn glove. Some of my cousins took them up on the offer, but not me. My glove is my glove. Now, like I said, I played organized baseball. You learn a lot playing in the little leagues. You learn that the coach's son always sucked. You learn that the coach's son played the whole game, even though he sucked. And I learned that if you're 14 and you look 11, you might be Dominican. I learned how to cut and paste birth certificate before the term cut and paste ever existed. I learned that a case of beer lasted in the dugout 6 innings with 2 coaches, or 3 innings with 2 coaches and 3 preteen alcoholics. Now I represented the Roberto Clemente Little League in the Bronx. And there was 4 teams on our league. The first team, the best one, was the Robertos, undefeated. In second place was the Clementes. Third place was the Roberto Clementes. And my last place team, the Clemente Robertos. We had 11 guys on our team. We all wore the number 21 and all our nicknames were Clemente Jr. I loved baseball, but my team sucked. But believe it or not, we won the championship that year. We played against the champs of the Orlando Cepeda Little League, the Orlandos. We played our hearts out that day, but they beat us 4-2. And we were all disappointed. We were crying like babies. And I'm not talking about tears trickling down. I'm talking about we cried loud and long. But then after about 15 minutes of straight crying, we were distracted by this loud, low-flying airplane that flew over us in slow motion. It had all our attention. You see, it was May of 1973, and baseball, it seemed, was all that we had. 5 months prior, DC-7 and an ocean had stolen our hero from us. Roberto Clemente was dead, and it hit us like a bomb all at once. We all mourned spontaneously for 3 hours on Fireman's Field in the Bronx. So yeah, in spite of what you heard, in the Bronx, there is crying in baseball.
Pittsburgh Pirates outfielder Roberto Clemente headed up relief efforts in his native Puerto Rico for victims of the Nicaraguan earthquake. Late last night, he was killed on a cargo plane that he was aboard, dragged shortly after takeoff from San Juan.
Roberto Clemente is the pride and joy of Puerto Rico, and he will always be the pride and joy of Puerto Rico. Now, one summer, Mommy sent me to Puerto Rico. She said I was going for a weekend. A month and a half later, I am still in Puerto Rico and crying like a baby. A month and a half is a long time for a 9-year-old. I actually thought she had sold me to my aunt and uncle. Money was tight back then. It was during the high Funcan Edison period. And it amazed me how much I missed my mom. And what was so hard is that nobody had a phone. Titi didn't have a phone. The nearest phone was 3 miles down the road at La Bomba, the fire station. Let me tell you something. One day, Titi's curtains went on fire, and she started yelling, "Ay, Dios mío, llámame a los bomberos, call the firemen." And I looked at her, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I had to run down the road. And let me tell you, it wouldn't have been so bad if my first week in Puerto Rico wasn't so horrible. It was traumatizing. Let me break down to you my first week in Puerto Rico. Day 1. I arrived in Puerto Rico. They slaughtered a pig in the honor of my arrival. In front of me. It was the most violent thing I had ever seen in my life. Let me tell you, they take this pig and they chase it up. Then they take it back to the head. Out cold. Then they take it and put a 20-inch blade and drain his blood. Listen, I was 9 years old from the Bronx. Prior to this, the most violent thing I had ever seen was my friend Vinny get a wedge against his will. Day 2, I tried ganepas for the first time. Oh my God, they were so good. They were so juicy, I couldn't get enough of them. Well, I fell asleep with a ganepa in my mouth. I was rushed to the hospital because I was choking on a ganepa. And it was one of those double Siamese twin ones. We get to the hospital, right? And the doctor takes me. And he takes his finger. And he pushes it down my throat. I was like, yo, what the fuck? I could have done that shit myself. They sent my ass home. I had to come back the next day because that same ganepa that had trouble going in, and that same doctor with that same, you already know what happened. My vacation, right? Day 3, I got locked in the bathroom, or as I'd like to call it, that smelly shed in the back of the house that's a hole in the ground where all the Puerto Rican lizard roaches and water bugs went to party. La Latrina. Let me tell you about that bag. When you stepped into that bag, it killed the urge to do anything. No matter what type of reading material you took with it, that shit was counterproductive. I was locked in that bathroom for 2 hours. I had bugs all over me.